The first economic summit, courtesy of NTV, will be happening on Monday the 5th. Three pivotal areas that we're focusing on, one being agriculture, the other tourism, and then industrialization. Things that we feel need to be focused on quite a bit. As a country, yes, we do a lot of politicking, and that's okay, we are political people, but we have got to move and check things. And there comes these sometimes convoluted subject matters, but we need to focus on them. This morning we deal with one of those pivotal areas, and today we talk agriculture, matters agriculture. At some point we thought that Uganda would become the food basket of the region because of its potential. Some feel it can actually become the food basket of the whole of Africa. But for some reason we are having challenges. You know, there is famine in Isinjiro, in Katakwi, in Kisoro. The other day government was telling us that 80 districts are affected. And we are thinking, what is wrong with this, our country? How can we jumpstart that area, the agricultural area, to make things better for us? That and more coming up on The Big Story. Let me get to my guests now. Hadji Jallow, he's the country representative for FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. Good morning, Hadji.
Good morning, Joel.
We also have Ramathan Ggobi. Ramathan is a policy analyst. Good morning, Ramathan.
Good morning, Joel.
Let me begin with you, Hadji. The last time we talked, which was how long ago? Maybe it is how long ago? A couple of weeks back. We were talking about, whether or not Uganda is food secure, and you said we are generally secure, and rightly so. But we are having challenges now. Many districts are grappling. Back in the day, when we used to go to the villages, we would come back with carfuls of food. But today, you go to the village with food. Because, the story has changed. What do you think is happening? Some will attribute it to climate change. Others will say, I don't know, many different things. What do you see is the problem?
I see as a major reason is climate change. Because the rains still come, but then they come late, and people cannot just cope with the pattern. And this is why we always said we have to emphasize the aspect of early warning systems. And those ones will collect the information that is necessary for farmers to know when to plant, how to plan actually the agricultural calendar. And in cases of drought, that is unfortunate. There isn't much they can do about that, because when the rains don't come, definitely the farmer is desperate. But then there are possibilities of working against that, and this is why we are also emphasizing the need for irrigation systems, because we have to now really work on irrigation. Even if it's the simple technology of drip irrigation in some quarters that can provide certain commodities that might be needed for the household, not necessarily exports or big scale on that small scale irrigation. Then we can look at the bigger scale for the large scale farmers. But we have to really address this particular case that we have in Uganda right now. It's not business as usual.
It's not business as usual, without a doubt. Ramathan, this thing called climate, this thing called weather, is it totally out of our control? Because you see, as a country, we are blessed without a doubt. Yeah. And maybe that's been part of our problem, that we have relied too much on the weather and on nature, and now it's turning against us. Well, we turned against it before it did, and then things are happening this way. Egypt is dry, but they have decided we are going to make use of this Nile. Israel, is nothing compared to us as far as, weather and nature is concerned. However, they are, I think, the #3 top exporters of bananas. That means they've begun to do certain things different. How can we get to do that?
I don't know, Joel, what we haven't said before. Our country is 15% water, and therefore when we see that we can't grow food throughout the year, and we are attributing it to God not bringing the rain, I think even God sometimes now sits somewhere and wonders, are these people really serious? This country, we need to move from talking and to doing things. Because all policy papers you read, research papers, they are full of recommendations, what we need to do. And they are simple things, like Hadji said. We need to move from relying on rain-fed agriculture entirely to now putting in some investment in irrigation. We may start with the drip irrigation. I saw the president trying to demonstrate with a bicycle and some bottles. But I think we need to move a little bit, an inch beyond that in terms of now solar-powered kind of pumps to help farmers who are at least near water sources to pump water into their gardens. But when you are crying of having a drought in a country which has 1,180 millimeters of rain a year, and these are maybe irregular, but you know that total is still, we receive it, but scattered, here and there. Sometimes it delays in the seasons which we are used to, the March, May season, and the December, rather November to quite around at the end of the year. So we need to really move on and put some money in these irrigation systems and stop relying on God.
Al-Hadji, do you see seriousness on our part as a country that we have got so much potential, but we are not harnessing it? I keep quoting the statistic of about 48.9% of East Africa's arable land is here in Uganda. That's land that is suitable for farming, for agriculture. Mm-hmm. It's talked about the rain and so much more that we have as potential. There's a time when we used to say agriculture is the backbone of this country, and we're doing a couple of things. But right about now, I don't know whether priorities have shifted or what has happened. Do you think we are doing what we should be doing?
Yes, to some extent, Joel. And to start on that, I just wanted to remind viewers on this aspect of agriculture, as seen by a famous, and I could say an expert ecologist, environmentalist, who is a Zimbabwean, Alan Savory. He had said that agriculture is not actually crop production as people believe. It is actually the production of food and fiber from the world's land and waters. So those two words I want us to note, land and waters. And he is convinced that agriculture is the foundation of civilization and obviously stable economy. He feels that there are no banks, universities, or whatever without agriculture. And we have to see it that way in Uganda, that agriculture is what will maintain this country. In spite of whatever we are talking about, service providers and whatever it is, if there is no food, those things will not work. Now, the government has done quite a lot in agriculture. Yes, we still have to do more. The government decided to divide the country into agricultural zones according to commodities. And because the country is blessed, you have so many things here, you have so many commodities. But then they said, let's divide it and then we will work our priorities according to where these things grow. And if you don't mind, I can give an example that you have, for example, in the northern part of Uganda, the northeast drylands that is mainly known as Karamoja. Then you have the middle ones, the savannas, the northwest savannas. Then you have the northeast savannas. Now with those, they grow cassava, for example, and it's known. But when you move to the northwest savanna, West Nile and the rest, they're thinking of beans. If you come all the way down to the southwest kind of grasslands, those areas, they have banana as the priority. You move maybe to the highland or rangelands, you have beans. Now, in dividing those, they are now putting people to concentrate on those and see the conditions that are needed to grow those. Cassavas might be a bit more resistant to certain conditions, dry conditions and stuff. Bananas might not be. How do you cope with those? Now, people had taken up mulching and other techniques to improve those bananas, those matokes that you have in the southwest. Now, the beans also, they brought in varieties that can produce more. The cassava, they have disease. They have to bring disease-resistant varieties that can be used in those areas. Now, in doing that, they were relying mostly on rain-fed agriculture. And they were on the patterns that are available. That is, come whatever it is. I'm really confused on the rainfall pattern right now, so you don't have to blame me if I get it wrong. But come October, you are expecting rain in these parts. So people prepare. They prepare the land. And if the rain doesn't come, what do you do? And then it spreads. The production doesn't come. You don't have the products. And then the food becomes short. And then you say, okay, we'll move food from other areas that have it. But in these days, those areas have challenges because the rains are not enough or they come too much that you have floods in there. So you have to now get the right information to address these issues. Where it's coming short. Why is it coming short? Because the rainfall is not much. Why? The climatic conditions. You have the information. Is it coming too much? Why is it coming too much? You have the information. And those affect agricultural lands. And if we don't address those, in the long run, we lose those productive lands. And then we cannot even get our pattern right. So what we're saying now is let's get this information aspect together. And I'm happy to note that the government is doing a lot in that because they've even set up NECOC at the Office of the Prime Minister. And NECOC is now putting the information together, not only to address disaster, but also preparedness. And that will avail the farmers and the greater community information that can be used to prepare for these conditions. And in addition to that, address the alternative, which in my opinion will be irrigation. Because you mentioned Egypt. Egypt is profiting a lot from the Nile to use those fertile lands along the Nile and get irrigation done so they produce as much as they want. So we have to also now use the opportunities we have in the waters. As my brother said, 15% of the land, the area here is water. Use the water now, tap it, and make use of it in the farmlands. Because it's not business as usual, as I said. So we have to address it as a situation that has changed, and we have to change with it and look at the alternatives. So that's how I see it.
Ramathan, of course, some will say, yes, it is still a priority, but then we are focusing on a couple of things. You see, the interesting thing about food is if you're to compare it to cars, for example, the other day, so we assembled a car. Some people think we manufactured it. I don't know how they do that. But you see, if you're to compare food to a car, for example, is that maybe 5 years from today, I might not need that car. A lot might have changed. It might have morphed into something else altogether. Yeah. And yet for food, 5 years from today, I shall still need food. Food as food. You know, and while a car could have alternatives, borders, trains, I understand they're about to make that happen too. One can fly. Food does not have alternatives. 5 years from today, it will be food. 10 years, 100 years, and that kind of thing. Did you see us prioritizing it, putting our money where our mouth is? Because the president will say, yes, you see, everything is intertwined. So when I build the roads, I'm actually funding agriculture. When I work on this infrastructure, I'm working on agriculture. Do you see it that way?
I think as far as funding is concerned, I think that one, government has improved it in recent years because the budget for agriculture as a sector, and in particular NADS, and this operation now which is going on, Operation Wealth Creation, money has been pumped into the sector. Actually, to the extent that these days now people are saying absorption capacity has actually come down. Agriculture cannot absorb the kind of money which government is trying to put in.
How so? When we're talking about holes on huge chunks of land as opposed to mechanization.
So the point now should move from money, how it is being used in the sector. It's used on what? Because now most of this money is going to purchasing seedlings, which are drying, in the garden. So I think those who are planning for the sector could see how to prioritize now in terms of expenditure breakdown. Could we have some seedlings of coffee, but on top of that, you have some maybe irrigation and fertilizer and other things also catered for under that basket we have. And most importantly, as Uganda, as you are saying, for a billion years to come, people will need food. Uganda, we need to use this opportunity because we are at the center of this belt where, agriculture is not doing so well. And therefore, many people around us are relying on us you know, Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia. They're about to, Tanzania not so much, but these other countries, the arable land is dwindling very fast, and yet ours is rising. And you know, they say that every country should be known for something. I don't know what Uganda is known for. There are countries, you know, that a car is coming from a certain country. These ones are making this. For us, we can concentrate, I think, on food, and we feed the world because we have the potential, as we have always been putting it. If we worked on things which are beyond, you know, going just to church and mosques to pray for. You know, I get confused when I see ourselves saying, let us have a national prayer for say, weather. And yet you have cut forests, you are clearing all of the trees. Maybe you get wood and build a wooden church, and then you go in the church and you're praying for rain. And that to me is quite big and serious. There are certain things which we have been doing in this country, which I think we need to go back and sit and see how do we move from just relying on nature, and we start realizing that actually God is amongst us. God created us to ensure that we can take control of the things around us. And one of them is the environment, which we have been just using the way we want. Another one is how we tap from that resource. Because as they say, you know, when God gives you a lot is expected. But we are not doing exactly that in the meantime. So we need to have a comparative advantage. And to me, organic food, we can really do it here if government moved from just talking about these issues and implement the good policy statements they have put out. Because let me tell you, Joel, when it comes to talking what should be done, Uganda, it doesn't have any problem there. We know exactly what should be done. We have written it, we have said it, we have come across so many conferences and workshops and government retreats which are discussing these issues. The biggest challenge is on walking the talk, going to implement those things. That's why here, I'm not here to start outlining, let us do this, we know. The entire country knows. Even the people down there in the villages, they have told government what they need, you know, to increase productivity. Talk about post-harvest handling, talk about dealing with these issues of technology, the seedlings they get, the quality issues and so on. So we know what needs to be done, but we just lack that, you know, kind of move to ensure that these things are implemented.
Alhaji, let's talk a bit about enforcement. Some feel the authorities need to go a little harder. There was a time when families in this country, each family had a granary, especially the upcountry families. You know that when you harvest, you store some bit of it for the rainy day. Well, for the dry day, if you like, because it will come. And it has come. And here we are grappling with, you know, drought and starvation and the like. And the feeling is that the authorities have pulled out of this, and everybody's on their own. You do what you want. Of course, some feel that, you know what, this should be self-propelled. Others will say, no, the heavy hand of the authorities needs to come in. Otherwise, people will not do things that need to be done. They will not store this food, and when they run out, they will again run to government. How do you think we can strike this balance?
No, I don't believe in sort of forcing people to do things. I believe in conviction and working with people to realize what the priorities are, and then they can take it forward. Now, the priority here for me is organizational development of the communities. And the organizational development has this whole series of things to consider, from the production of the food, to the storage of the food, to maybe marketing of the food. Right. So now when it comes to storage and even the household welfare, that's where you convince people that you have to store some for yourself. Now, not only storing it, putting in bags and putting on the beds and putting in small stores, no. You have to also help them to store them in containers that can last. These days, there are a lot of containers that are coming around that even insects or pests cannot penetrate. Now, some of these are expensive for some of the farmers. The last World Food Day, there was a lot of exhibition in Lira on storage containers. The World Food Program brought in quite a lot of them, and even other entrepreneurs were showing these containers. Now, for the average farmer, it's convenient, they can take care of it. But the small farmers have difficulties in even acquiring those. Now, the government should find means of subsidizing some of those. As they do with tractors, they give people tractors or they give communities. They can come up with these things in large scale, acquire them and give these people that these are useful for you. They will use it because they know how useful it is. So this is how I think we should go about this, rather than forcing people to say you have to store. You have to store, yes. I think almost all of them know they have to store something for the family and for longer term, but how to store it? Some of these people don't even know the effect of some of these weevils and others on the products that they store in their houses, in their stores. So we have to improve the knowledge aspect in agriculture and also provide these things for them at subsidized prices, because some countries do it. When you come to certain areas which are of priority, you find the means, you work with the Ministry of Finance to see whether you can have a window to provide this for genuine users, not for people who will tag along and make use of the loopholes and make profits. No, but genuine users should be given that kind of subsidy. Because I know some industrialists or some so-called private sector investors, they make a lot of noise about having government incentive, having subsidies to do this, to do that. But the base should also be taken care of. Those people who produce, those people who matter, should be given some of those small subsidies in terms of storage and in terms of irrigation. You mentioned irrigation, Joel, but it has an impact. We have been working on valley tanks and reservoirs through funding, yes, from donors like the Kingdom of Belgium, the Department of International Development, for the International Development of the UK, and the EU. And we've seen how communities, small clusters, have been transformed through those valley tanks, through those reservoirs, and they have pumps that provide the water for drip irrigation. And you see the women with the tomatoes and everything. It's documented. We have records of them. And I can give you an example of Mubende. The women were so pleased. They had to take these tomatoes to the market, and it improved the household. So we have to look at some of those priority areas and convince governments that it's useful, it's profitable to channel some of the surplus, if there is any, or the subsidies to do some of those areas, so that these people can store this food for, you know, the days that are not really as good as we are experiencing now.
Let's wrap it up this way. Of course, away from the fact that we are having deficiencies in production, Ramathan, there is another predicament on our hands, value addition, that even what we produce many times, it remains that way. We shall export these commodities, the few that we do, and then they get back. You find them on our supermarket shelves, having been processed, value has been added, and it is, you know, 10 times more expensive than it were. How do we approach this? How do we make sure that, you know what, away from producing, we can add value to this and get the full cut?
Very simple. I myself, around 2010, and a group of others, we wrote a simple policy document asking government to enter into public, private, and even community partnerships to build rural-based agro-processing centers. And these are intended to have, in the form of a fully-fledged facilities, like a one-stop center for farmers to have where they can take their things and process them. But we said, could this work? So we approached some of the people in government, we explained it. One of them who picked interest is General Salim Saleh. And he said, I can pilot this. So first he sold it to government, and I think they were not listening to him. So he went and he told us that he had to sell his house in Garuga, picked money and went to Luwero and put up Namunkekera Rural Industrial Center. And when you go to Kapeka today and you ask the farmers around, smallholder farmers, they will tell you a story, how their kind of, value of their produce kind of peaked. And really they were very, very pleased to have now a facility where they could sell their things, add value, and get a good price. It's like he contracted them to farm when prices are guaranteed. And it helped to give this incentive to these farmers. Like you were saying, can't we force people? You know, yes, at one time people could be forced. But today you can use incentives. Human beings, as I always say, respond to two things: incentive or danger. Now, when you can't use danger, especially in a democracy, because when you whip them today, I hear a lot of people saying, let us get bylaws which force people to do things. They will vote you out of government if really they do not want to do that, and we are forcing them. And by the way,
so we should incentivize them now.
Incentivize them through those agro-processing centers, and they add value to their produce. They get good farm gate prices. They reduce wastage. They also get value for money for their produce. Then they will go back to the gardens.
Clearly,
to add to that quickly, Joel, if you don't mind, this value addition, if you go to these exhibitions, you see always people coming up with very good products in their own ideas. The hibiscus has now become a drink, as you know, and the other things that they use to produce juice. Now the juice, they don't get much support. In other countries, when you have certain things coming locally, you try to protect those for them to grow, and especially in agriculture. So they can stop some of these fizzy drinks that come in, you know, from all quarters, and promote the local ones. That will give these people more money, and then they can add value to the product. The maize also, maize mills and others, they can provide at maybe subsidized prices to have more of those maize flour. In Nigeria, they worked very hard on cassava, and now they're having cassava flour being used even for bread. And that is a very significant value addition for something like that. And you have a lot of cassava in Uganda, which can be used for some of those things. So we have to look into adding value through some of those small schemes or agro industries that we can really do well with in Uganda.
The potential is there. Let's see how we tap into it. Thank you to my guests, Hadji Jallow from FAO and Ramathan Ggobi. Thank you.